Hi there, this is Rob Bell. This is Getting the Record Straight. I wanted to do another brief segment and kind of follow up on where I left off. Didn't have quite enough time to get into finish up this piece on what I'm calling the China syndrome. This is our Truth to Power segment. Please subscribe, and I won't be but a few minutes, but some of this stuff really requires us to go over a little more thoroughly. And yeah, so I wanted to get back into that. Also, I talked in the previous video about what was happening in Philadelphia and Mark Tyler's article um, in the Philadelphia Tribune. Mark Tyler being the pastor at Mother Bethel AME Church here in Philadelphia, very famous religious institution there, here rather. And but I did want to mention that there are two funds that you can contribute to that will help inmates and folks who are in jail and can't afford the bail to get out, and particularly during this time. While this virus this pandemic is as lethal and as serious as it is, people who don't need to be in jail and can't afford bail should have an opportunity to get out. So you can help with that. You can contribute to the Philadelphia Bail Fund or the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. I don't know what the difference is. It is my understanding that they do work together. So again, that's the Philadelphia Bail Fund, Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, and I'm sure you can find both of those online and how you can contribute. I want to pick back up with this issue of the United States diverting attention from its own responsibility, particularly the Trump administration, and putting that elsewhere, particularly on China. And, this is part of really aggressive tactics that have been taking place on a lot of different levels in terms of the military in the Pacific, threatening China, always this display of military might going on in that area, and as well as this propaganda. And on so many different media outlets, you see all this criticism of China, what they're doing, and basically that China was culpable for the pandemic and for covering it up. So, as I said, I think I read a piece from the Daily Beast, and it claims that Beijing hid news of the virus from its own people for weeks while suppressing info and punishing doctors and journalists who raised the alarm. And this is coming from the intelligence community here in the United States and from some really seedy characters like Steve Bannon and Frank Gaffney. But I also read an article in Global Research written by Steve Lenman, I've read many of his articles, and he is very good in terms of investigative reporting. And these cables that have been sent out by the intelligence community, they never have any supporting evidence because there really isn't any. And Lindemann says that on the other side, in terms of support for what China has done, he says, according to Science Business on April 7th, China and its scientists led the way in tackling the virus. They won international praise for hitting several key milestones in understanding the novel, fast-moving virus. Biomedical sciences professor Ian Jones explained that many research findings from the Chinese experience are now appearing, providing valuable information to other nations. Lancet editor, that's a magazine, Richard Horton noted that Chinese scientists took time to write up their findings in a foreign language and seek publication in a medical journal thousands of miles away. Their rapid and rigorous work was an urgent warning to the world. We owe those scientists enormous thanks. The University of Southampton senior research fellow Michael Head said, "We're seeing reasonable cooperation between China and elsewhere," adding, "The Chinese have been leading the way in publishing open access evidence on case management, genomics, and numerous areas of public health and epidemiology, which has been vital in informing the response in more or less every country." Again, this is not to say that China didn't do some things wrong or, in a situation like this, I can't think of a country that, wouldn't take time before they actually said, well, such and such is a pandemic, that they wouldn't take time to, look at things, investigate, study, and try to figure out what in fact they had on their hands. I think this thing has really been overblown, and I think it's just a typical example, really, of the United States trying to make another enemy, another opportunity to attack, perhaps not militarily, but in some way, and to really get the onus off of them, to try to discredit the Chinese policies, the Chinese administration, their type of government. We're the only major country without a really functioning public health system and universal health care. So they want to undermine all of that. And that's what you're seeing, I think, primarily with these accusations that are coming out against China. Not to mention the fact that in other places, with Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, the United States is just really acting atrociously. And we really need to be focusing on that here internally with our own country. So I really wanted to come back and focus on that. And, this country has a horrible history when it comes to biological weaponry and chemical weapons, using them, selling them. We all know about the Tuskegee experiments. We should know about napalm and Agent Orange. These are things we use and have destroyed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know whether you've ever heard of something called MK Ultra, but these were experiments. Again, the Tuskegee, experiment that was done on our own people. MK Ultra done on our own folks. I still don't know, and I don't think the truth has come out really about AIDS. Particularly the fact that it supposedly started in Africa, and it may be that it was transmitted from a monkey to a human, but I don't think it's been adequately addressed why and how. It's just supposedly it just happened. But there was an excellent documentary done years ago called The River, and I encourage you to watch it. The River, and it was done by an investigative reporter out of Britain and out of England, and it is an excellent piece. And what it basically suggests is that unintentionally or perhaps by accident, that someone who's doing research on drugs in Africa, a polio vaccine, against the advice of other doctors in other parts of the world, may have somehow enabled that dreaded disease to get out. And, the mainstream press basically debunked that. They didn't investigate it, and it seems far more plausible than much of what's been presented. So, I really ask you to be cautious, to really think critically about what you're hearing, because next thing you know, we may be at war with this country. And at the very least, it helps to sustain the military industrial complex and the incredible amount of money and resources which are wasted to maintain our presence and overlording, if you will, of the world and other parts of the world. So thank you. This has been Getting the Record Straight. I just wanted to get back and kind of finish that. Appreciate it. Please subscribe and have a good weekend. Take care.